G'day, Nick Dingle back here for a second lesson to do with software engineering. This time around, I'm sorry, we're not going to get into the coding today. We are going to talk about two bits of very important software, namely Visual Studio Code and Python. The great thing about these is they are professional software that's going to get you into coding really, really quickly. They're tiny downloads and they tend to work on every single operating system for desktop and laptop computers. So let's start off. Let's go and get Visual Studio Code by simply Googling Visual Studio Code download. Head into the first link, and depending on your operating system, for me it's Windows. If it's a Mac, obviously choose this one, but I'm just going to select the top one, and it will start our tiny little install. I think it's about 90 megabytes. Yep. So while it's downloading, let's quickly talk about what it is. Now, Visual Studio Code is what you call an IDE, an integrated development environment. And what that essentially means is it allows you to write code, but not only can you write the code in it, because you can write code in Notepad or Word if you really want to, it allows you to run the code, it allows you to debug the code, it allows you to package the code, it allows you to add extensions and add on extra functionality for your code. That is the whole idea of an IDE. And Visual Studio Code was born from Microsoft, obviously, because it's got a name all over it. It was born from Visual Studio. Now, don't confuse the two. They are both IDEs, but very different use cases. Visual Studio these days will only work on Windows computers, and it's used to develop Windows-based apps most of the time. And that's actually quite a big, heavy program. Visual Studio Code is a really cut down, smallish version of Visual Studio, and it's essentially just the text editor version. But the benefit is with extensions, you can add any programming language and any tool you want almost into Visual Studio Code. And that's why it's becoming probably the most popular IDE in essentially the entire world. So once you've got that downloaded, let's give it a quick install. Let's jump over to here, hit that button. Totally agree, Microsoft. Yes, I want it there. Yep. This option here, you don't need to worry about these too much. However, if you want an icon on your desktop, obviously tick that one there. And let's hit the install. And it should be fairly quick. While it's doing that, let's go and get Python. So again, search for Python download. The first link, if it's not an ad, should be the correct result. And you simply have to click on this yellow button. What you're downloading here is called the Python interpreter. In order to run Python code, you need an interpreter in some way, shape, or form. This one I find is just the easiest. It just installs everything you need. It's got a lot of extra stuff for when you get more advanced applications made, and it just works with Visual Studio Code really easily. So let's quickly have a look here. I don't want to launch it yet, but I am finished. And let's quickly get Python installed because that's going to be a matter of clicking two things. I want to tick add it to the path, and I want to click install now. There we go. That is the entirety of the download and setup process. Really straightforward and simple. Now, once this is done, we're going to jump into Visual Studio Code, take a little bit of a look-see around, not too much, because in the next video, we're actually going to set up a folder and set up some programs and write some code. But we do need to install one thing when we get to Visual Studio Code. So come on, Python, you can do it. All right, we're done. Fantastic. I was about to pause. We don't need to anymore. All right. Bye-bye, Chrome. I don't like you anymore. Let's go to Visual Studio Code just by searching for it in the menu or in your launcher, depending on what operating system you're running. When you jump into Visual Studio Code, you're going to be greeted with the welcome page, or maybe even a step-by-step guide of how you want to set up Visual Studio Code. Because I've already run this on the computer, I don't get those questions. So let's just quickly go into code and look at a couple of things. The first thing I want to look at is extensions. Now, an extension is adding on extra functionality to Visual Studio Code. And the great thing about VS Code is there is so much that just exists, and 99% of it is free. And this is what makes code so good. So what I'm going to do is just simply type in Python, if I can spell. There we go. And you're going to click the install button. Now, I didn't have to click the install button because I already had it installed on my computer, apparently. But yes, if you just click on the install button, that'll give you the Python extension, which allows you to make, run, debug, and do all sorts of crazy things with Python programs. That's essentially it. That's the entirety of it. To close the extension section, you simply have to close this tab and either click on extension or click on another one of these little buttons. So guys and gals, that's this video done and dusted. In the next video, again, we're going to explore how to create a folder for your applications that's going to be automatically backed up. And then we'll start actually writing some code using the print command. So I'll see you in the next video.